Everyone online says you need to scale with a course. And I say, sell the damn service. I'm Emily Williams, award-winning consultant and productized offer expert since 2014. And I'm here to help you work less, make more, and stop custom building your burnout. Each week, we talk strategy, structure, and the real stories behind sustainable service businesses. You know, from service providers who like doing service work, who want to stay in service work, but also just make more money. If you're ready for all that yapping, then let's dive in. Hey, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am fantastic.
I'm
It's a good weather day today, so
Yes,
gotta be happy about that, right?
we were chit-chatting about the weather. It's always so funny. I saw someone post on Threads the other day where they're like, "Hey, I don't mind, like actually love having small talk about the weather to like start a conversation." And I was noticing that nearly every single one of these episodes, the very first 2 minutes or so is like, "Where are you located and what's the weather?" So I just feel like it's a good, I don't know, grounding of like what's going on over there.
Well, that's the beauty of a podcast is you're connecting with people that aren't just in your little neck of the woods, but they could be anywhere in the world, really. And so it's kind of interesting to see what their life is like that's not like your life and the contrast or the similarities.
Exactly. I was chatting with someone the other day and I'd have to go back and listen to the episode to see how we even got there. But within the first like couple seconds, she's from Canada, lived there, grew up there, hated the weather, and now lives in Mexico. And so I was like, oh, screw business. I want to talk about that this entire episode because what a
Right.
transition. And so that was really cool where I was like, this is incredible. You're living a whole other life that I didn't even know was possible. So jealous. Well, what's something really exciting that you are working on in business this quarter, this week, this month? What you got going on over there?
Well, I run 2 events every year, and one of them is called Visibility Velocity. So that's kind of my whole team, and my focus right
Yeah,
now is getting the right speakers in the room, aligning with these amazing podcast hosts, getting all the pieces in place. We will open up shortly for people to join us. It's a virtual event, which kind of creates all the technical pieces, but
yeah,
it's one of my favorite events I get to do. Everybody loves it. People have these huge breakthroughs. They actually land podcast interviews and speaking gigs right in the room. So it's a
that's
lot of
really
fun,
cool.
but it's a lot of focus
It's a
for a
lot
few
of
weeks
work.
before.
Is this the second time you've ran it, or how long have you
Yeah, I've
hosted
done
this?
similar events for years. I've been doing this for 25 years. So
Yeah,
we've had lots of iterations of things, but yeah, it's the second year that we've done it. I do 2 different events each year, and yeah,
nice.
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember this was back in like 2017, I think. I was at my previous company. It was larger, with a much larger audience, but we were running. You know when like virtual summits became really popular, and not like conferences and summits where there's
Yeah.
different tracks and there's different days and different things, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. But this was like when it was kind of new to kind of go all in on that. People started not just showing up in person at conferences, but doing it virtually. And so we organized this whole conference and it was incredible. We had like over 10,000 registrants, which was bananas. I was not expecting it. But the week of the conference that was supposed to be held, so we have, the 3 tracks going at the same time and a main stage, like a virtual main stage speaker. And so we're juggling all the tech and doing the things. The week before all of this was set to go out, I got called for jury duty. And
Oof.
so I go and I have to get myself out of it because I'm like, there's no way my team can do this without me. I am a literal like MC for this thing and a host and a speaker and like all of this stuff. And so I have to go into this older lady's little tiny office and explain to her why I can't do jury duty that specific week. And I just, I don't think she'd heard of the internet at that point. And so I'm trying to explain to her the criticalness of me being there. And she couldn't understand that. She's like, but it's not in person. Like you're not going there. And I'm like, no, but that doesn't really matter. And I was in her office for probably 30 minutes trying to explain to her how serious it was that I had to be at this event. She eventually let me out of jury duty, but I, I was like, this is gonna be a big deal if I can't make this. And I'm sure that, you not being there the week of one of your conferences would be kind of a big deal.
Well, it probably wouldn't happen without me, so there would be
Right.
that, but I was even just thinking as you're talking, like, how extraordinary is it that one of the most painful, catastrophes we've had in the world actually transformed how people
Yes.
experience the internet, right? And so we normalized, having experiences on Zoom or whatever the online, platform is. Now, not everybody loves it, and we're
Mhm.
starting to see more people go back to in-person events, but I think before we had that stage of our, evolution, we didn't actually understand how powerful an event could be for people, online. So,
Yeah.
we'll give a little kudos for that we got
Yeah.
to have a big breakthrough in how people experience the online world.
Do you feel like you changed your virtual events after COVID and, changed the experience at all?
Well, that's a really interesting question because I don't think it was COVID that did it, but rather it's just how the world is shifting and how
Yeah.
people want to be transformed. I think people are looking for more transformation, not just more information.
Mhm.
And so I think the way people run summits and online events and events in general has had to evolve quite a bit in order to continue to be relevant, to be desired, and to be, chosen, which is
Yeah.
a big part of my teaching overall. And so, for me, we went from doing more like multiple speakers with, that could contribute the content, but also help co-promote, I call it.
Mhm.
But now it's more about, like, what is the experience I'm creating for my attendees?
Yeah.
And I'm very, very, very picky about who is on stage, and I am very concerned about, like, the quality of
Yes.
the session rather than the quality of the person's list and that's their qualification to get on stage. So I think it's just changed a lot of what we or at least those of us that understand and are navigating this transformation with everybody else, it's like, yeah, we have to we have to think about what is different for the person at the end of the event.
Mhm.
So that's how
Mhm.
I design all my events is what's the outcome they can count on, and yeah, so
I just wanna make a comment for my listeners because they know I call this out whenever I have a guest on who proves my point even in their own industry, I like to call it out, and so the specific thing here is I talk to my clients all the time and listeners will understand this. I am always harping on, if you could pick one result, one outcome that you would like your client to get from that container, what would it be? And once you identify that, then everything else, that's the filter that you run it through, right? Okay, well, what's the asset? What's the price? What's the scope? What's the onboarding? What does all of it look like in order to get that result and maintain that experience? And you're doing that in a networking or virtual conference education space, which I think is really critical. What do we want the outcome for our attendee to be at the end of this? And is everything set up to lead to that result? Love. Because I also feel like as someone who, I've applied for countless virtual events, less in person. It has to be a nice shiny package for me to get out of this house and get on a plane and leave my family and go and put real clothes on and go to an event. I am doing it this year. I'm going to an event in Nashville that I got asked to speak at, and I'm nervous and excited, but I'm like, "What that's good. One is good for me. I will do all the other virtual things." But I have noticed a shift, I feel like, in the last, I think, 6 to 8 months in my own specific industry where people who are running events are getting more particular about who they're having on the virtual stage and making sure that they don't have overlapping conversations and topics, and I'm sure mapping that out is a feat in and of itself. How do you what do you feel like are your best tricks for making sure the quality of people who are showing up is top notch?
well, that's a really great question. Nobody's ever asked me that before because normally I'm talking about how you decide, like, where you're gonna speak,
Right.
the other side of the microphone and
Yeah.
doing, like, really understanding the factors. But I'm going through this right now because I had a lot of really extraordinary applications from people, and I'm like, "Yeah, I got limited spots." It's not like
Yeah.
I can expand the spots. and maintain the quality of the experience, right? So, some of the things that I look at is how aligned is the topic with the outcome I want for my attendees, and how synergistic is it with what I'm talking about? Like, I have somebody who's a
Yeah.
really, really big name. I love them so much. We've done a lot of collaborating together, and I'm having to kinda, like, come back and forth with her and go, "I'd love to hire you, but I need a different topic,"
Mhm.
because her topic was kind of destroying the
Yeah.
the point of view I had for the event, and it's still valid, it's just the way she was approaching it, I was like, "Yeah, I don't think I can put that on stage." And then somebody else, I was looking at, and it's a topic that I think would be really, really valuable because I'm teaching people not just the why, getting visibility and amplifying the reach of their message through being a podcast guest or the other pieces that I teach. Not just why that's valuable and how to do that, but also what are those little levers that are going to, like, make you memorable, that
Yes.
and like I call it, like, really create this unignorable quality
Yeah.
in the experience that you give people from the moment you pitch yourself all the way through the moment that somebody listens to
Oh,
your
that's a
session.
good way to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just like you gotta capture the host's attention, but
Right.
you
Like, I
also
have a
have
really
to.
good topic, and
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, what's this gonna do? So, I had somebody who had the right topic, which is storytelling, but when we did the research on them, their delivery, their quality of presentation was really low, and I was like,
Mm.
"Yeah, I can't really bring
Yeah.
that into the space," as talented as they are, and I'm sure they've got great, assets, and, there may be some other ways we can collaborate, but it wasn't really right for the stage for this particular event. And last year when I did this, the speakers we had were such high quality because I handpicked them from my personal network,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So this year we opened it up a little bit more, and so having to do more digging. And I guess that would be the third thing, Emily, is like, I really feel like the quality of any event you put on, of any show you host, of the collaborations you do, like, we're going to lean into the people that we already know, like, and trust first. But if you're gonna go outside of that, then it's like the authority positioning, the clarity of messaging, the, ability to really demonstrate value. That's what show hosts and event bookers are looking for.
Yeah. This is giving me so much to think about because I've been also considering tweaking the form that I have folks who fill out who wanna be on this show, um, and figuring out the kind, but also clear way of asking certain questions, right? Where it's like, "Yes, I want you to be a service provider, and do you have a personality to tell a story behind the mic?" And I was explaining this to someone when I was doing a couple of recordings with conversations that I felt like I had to work a little bit harder to pull out, some story and some just conversation. And I was chatting with someone who is a good friend of mine, and she has a, like, acting background, and I do not have an acting background, literally at all. But one of the things that I think I bring to the table and that I told her, I said, "I wish more people had this skill and I don't know how to communicate it." I said, "I want more people to yes and me. Like, say the thing and then take it further and add your context." Like, there are folks who just kind of just wait for the next question and, like, don't provide their own nuance. And I said, as an interviewer, I'm simultaneously, while I want people to yes and me, I am also learning how to get better at interviewing, right? And pull out those questions and ask. But she was like, "Oh, well, from my acting experience, that's all we did. Like, improving is just yes and that." I said, "You're such a good guest." She goes, "Yeah, I'm an actor." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that makes sense." So I need more people to go to
Yeah.
improv class, I think.
Well, there's a lot of ways to navigate that, and I think hosting your own podcast, and I certainly have learned this from hosting my podcast for, uh, it's not 9 years this year, and I had a podcast before
Congratulations.
that,
Yeah.
and I interviewed people on my CD club. So if you're
Yeah.
listening in audio, I've got air quotes going.
Yes.
I had, like, a CD club for, like, 7 years that I interviewed people on teleseminars. Like, do we even know what that is
Ooh.
anymore? And then I would send them in a CD. So I've had a lot of experience with that. But I also know that there's a dance between the host and the guest. And this is one of the things that I teach my clients because I find that it's not intuitive, but it can be learned. There's like multiple styles that people have.
I'm
And
ready.
one of them is
I'm
like the
set.
intellectual, right? Like,
Yes.
I want to tell you all the facts and data, but then they get lost in the facts and the data and they don't
Yeah.
realize they're not telling stories. They're not really inspiring anybody. They're just like downloading a bunch of information. Then
Mhm.
there's the fire hose. So I had this client one time who went through my authority program and you would laugh like this aha moment was so like, it was one of those, like, all of a sudden the skies parted and the clarity dropped in, and I was talking about the difference between the analytical, the hose, and a couple other styles, and I talked about the fire hose being somebody who gets so wrapped up in their stories that they literally talk for 15 minutes straight, and they don't allow the dance with the host. And I said, "You think you're being entertaining, but what's happening is you, first of all, just delivered all of this, like, flood of information
Yep.
and nobody took it in because they couldn't keep up with your train of thought because you just went blah, 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 blah. And she had this moment where she went, oh my gosh, I think I just realized why I've been delivering my heart and soul into
Yep.
these interviews and no one ever does anything. Nobody takes that next step with me. And
I
so we
l
had to work on, like, how she could talk about her
Yeah.
stories and stuff in a way that was more soundbitey and more like, consumable by the listener and the host.
Yeah. I love this so much, and I fear that I might be the first type that you talked about sometimes because I do get into like, and then I did this, and here was the result, and then I did this. And I do like to, I love being interviewed. I love being asked questions specifically. Like, it's just, everyone loves to talk about themselves. And so, like, bringing that in, but bringing it in a way that is actually going to be applicable to someone else and who you want listening and where they're at, like meeting them where they're at. I it has my brain going of like, okay, what are resources that like you and other experts in this space have available? Like, should I compile up? I'm sure you've talked about this like on a podcast or in a blog post or in a resource, and like having this as my like pre interview kit where it's like, go read this or go do this thing so that you can be ready.
Yeah, maybe you just send them this interview, right?
I know, right? I'd be like, okay,
Yeah,
go
I
listen to this first.
actually I do have a resource that I share, with my guests, and it's called the 17, mistakes that guest experts make that cost them the lead and the client. And I gotta tell you, this one report with a scorecard has transformed not just my guests, but also people that potentially might go through my program because they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was making these mistakes."
Yeah.
Like, one of them is just simply winging it. And now in your format, you're
Yeah.
okay with that
Yeah. I
because
want you to wing it.
yeah, because you're not about this contrived thing, but there are things that we wing that end up eroding our time, our capacity, our energy, right? Like, I'm always testing things just to see what lands in. I had somebody approach me not too long ago to do a podcast swap, which basically means we both have podcasts that are really valuable, and we're gonna share interviews for each other, right? And I did the interview with him first, and I was like, okay. And then we did the interview on mine, and I was like, man, like, I don't know, am I gonna share this? Because it didn't light me up to
Yeah.
talk to him. It kinda constricted me, and so these are the kinds of things where it's like that like, I did do my research and I didn't pick up on it until I was in it, but now that I know those signals, I'll be
Yeah.
looking for that going forward because you want the conversations you have to light you up on their platform as well as your platform.
Absolutely, and there's certainly been times where I've been editing an episode and, you know, it takes work to make I it's really difficult to take, a conversation that maybe didn't land and edit it to be something that is desirable to listen to, and I am not an editor, and so I certainly do not have those skills, and it's still it's difficult, and so it is I've interviewed hundreds of people. I had a previous podcast as well that had I was a co-host on for over 700 episodes, and so what's funny though, maybe you have a take on this. I was told recently, I've been told this twice in my life now. Once when I had my previous podcast, and it was a similar structure where it was for business owners, but it was a solo episode and then an interview episode every week. And I do the same thing here. I have a solo 20-ish minute episode every Tuesday and then an interview every Thursday. Someone way back in the day, and then someone literally last week said, I like your solo episodes better than your interviews. And first of all, that kind of hurt my feelings. Second of all, I still want to have interviews because I love getting to meet people. And this gets me outside of my comfort zone. And I feel like I don't want to just, you guys don't want to hear me yapping forever. So if that's the feedback I got, what do I do about that?
I love this so much. So there's, I'm my friends always call me like I'm one part woo and like 3-part strategy.
I love,
Right?
and same. I love this. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I'm like one woo on the woo woo scale. But I really do believe that we have to integrate some kind of strategic presence, right? We have to have intentionality. And when it comes to podcast guesting and how we host our own podcast or our own show, I think you have to decide, first of all, what's important to you, because guesting has multiple levels of contribution, but solo episodes have a real presence as well. So on my show, I rotate between a solo, and usually it's like 2 or 3 solos, an on-air coaching episode where I'm coaching somebody in my Rising Tide Collective.
Mhm.
And then I have, or sometimes it's people that have won that exposure, but then
Mhm.
I have a guest. And I used to be primarily guest, so 3 guest episodes to 1 solo. And here's what I discovered. First of all, the solo episodes are almost always when people learn what you do and why you.
For sure.
And that is the part that if you're doing too many guest episodes, you're saturating your podcast listeners with other people's expertise instead of yours. So you want to make sure you're always front and center. But it can be very difficult to grow the reach of your show if it's just you. And I really truly believe that having a podcast and like little secret sauce behind the initiative to start Amplify Your Success, I started it because I wanted to have a valuable asset to give visibility to collaboration partners, to have an easy yes for somebody to say, okay, well, Melanie's interviewed Bob Berg. She's interviewed Alina Vincent. She's interviewed, whoever some of the big celebrity energies are. She's interviewed these people that I relate to that are just like
Mhm.
me in my business. Um, I'd love to be interviewed by a Melanie, right? And I'm going to open that door by inviting Melanie to my show first, right? So there becomes some intentionality about it. It's a really beautiful way to start dating somebody. And
Yes.
hey, if you hate the conversation, you don't have to air it because it's your platform,
And that's
right?
in my agreement.
Right? I did. I saw that. I was like, oh, that was smart. And, I'm like, if I just don't like it, if I don't think the value is there, I'm not going to air it because the trust and the rapport that I build with my Amplify community has to be the number one thing that I serve.
For sure.
Now, that being said, I have just set a personal goal. I want your listeners to go, that was one of my favorite guest interviews you did, Emily.
Yes. Yes.
So
Okay.
if
Yeah.
they're like you, if they love your solos, I want to be the one that they go, that was a great one. Do
This
more like
one.
that too.
And I'm open to that feedback and understanding. Okay, and not to do this like as a coaching session for my own show, but I get so much positive feedback from the lack of structure for my guest episodes from both my guest and listeners, where they're like, if I listen to one more episode that's, 17 tips to 7 figures while you sleep, I'm going to throw my phone. And so I'm very specific about not wanting that structure. And I co-hosted that structure for many years of like, what's the thing you want to teach, and come on and tell us your tips. And it's a very structured and we guide it. I love both. And I feel like we, especially last year, we're kind of heading into the season of the online business space of like, I just want to kind of sit down and be a fly on the wall of a business conversation, right? And it's why I frame it as like founder to founder conversations where I'm just going to be nosy and I'm going to ask you questions and we're just going to see where the conversation lands. So people like the structure and they still like the solos where I'm delivering one tangible thing for them to apply or take away. So it's really interesting. I'm curious to hear, how can I mesh structure in a non-structured format?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I'm a big fan of being curious and experimenting and seeing
Same.
like, okay, when I kind of tweak this, what happens? So I did a episode on my podcast, and I'm usually the person where when I do my solos, I'm kind of teaching something substantial. We might have some tips or a process or something, but I've done a couple rants
I love a rant.
and or kind of like a peek inside Melanie's head. And one of them I did was on, like, the identity of, like like, shedding the identity of who we've been up to now,
Mhm.
and recognizing that the very thing that's holding us back in our growth is that we're holding on to the old us instead of, like, stepping into the new us. I could not believe how many people emailed me and messaged me about that episode. I was like, "Hit a nerve there."
Yeah.
I also did one last year where I ranted on some of the big changes that are happening in the podcasting industry because I'm a pattern observer.
Me
I,
too.
I like to watch the patterns that are emerging. You know, I'm on both sides of the microphone. I'm a guest, I'm a host. I also help place my guests or my clients on other people's shows. And I have a whole community of people that collaborate and co create visibility for each other, right? So I'm in this
You're in
industry
it.
deep. And when I started to see some things shifting, like how podcast hosts accept new guests. For a long time, pitching was like, yeah, great. It's getting me in front of some new clients. But now there's such a saturation of maybe we might call ineffective pitching. We'll be kind
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
And it's like hosts are so burned out, they're like, "Nope, I'm only taking people I know, like, and trust." There's some other patterns that are going on where people are being, they're recognizing the value of this kind of visibility for their business, but they're not, appreciating and honoring the visibility and really, like, giving back to the host. So a lot of hosts are like, "I'm tired of being used for my platform," right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot that's shifting and moving and, we're introducing AI, we're seeing buying behavior change, right? And so I did a whole rant on that on my show. Oh my gosh, I got so many invitations to speak.
That is,
They
they're like, "We want you." Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, "Can you bring that to my show, or can we talk about that on this panel at this event?" So you just never know what people are going to respond to, and that's why I like to kind of, like, see what's bubbling up in me and how can I bring that into my show and in a way that's valuable for the audience.
Yeah. I love that. This really is making me wanna be a lot more, I wanna say strict, but that's not, a lot more, uh
Discerning?
yeah, discerning about who I wanna have on the show with potentially airing less guest episodes. And if I publish 2 solo, maybe it's 2 guest episodes a month instead of 4. Maybe going down to 1, but making them really, really, really vetted. I think the problem for me, and there's a solution if I think about it, but what are the questions that I need to ask in order to get the type of guest that I'm actually looking for? I think that that's
Yeah.
part of it.
And I think this is where I lean into my network.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I rarely take pitches,
Mhm.
rarely. Like maybe 1 out of 1,000 pitches I
Yeah,
accept. And I really lean into, like, who do I know? Who do I already trust? Who do I recognize their expertise or the conversation they're having would be really, really exciting to
yeah.
bring to my community, either as a speaker or as a guest on my show or, whatever the
Some
platform is.
collaboration, yeah.
And I think this is one of the kind of the nuances we're seeing evolve in the industry overall is and even like the matchmaking sites, a lot of people like these
Yeah.
matchmaking programs, and those are great at a certain stage, but when you hit a level of discernment, I love that that word is
Mhm.
the one that feels resonant, you're gonna go, "Who do I already know? Who do I trust? Who do I recognize will help amplify the reach of the episode by sharing it to their communities, right? Like the quality of the guests rises. We're going to go to the people we know, like, and trust, which is why I think community starts to become the place that we lean on the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm excited about these changes and hopefully listeners are too of figuring out and maybe some of it is do you recommend and have you garnered any insights by doing this sending out a poll or a survey to your current active listeners to kind of see what the vibe is that they want of the show or who they want on or what direction they want it to go into or is it just made in-house?
My gauge is what do our download numbers saying?
Yeah.
And how many messages and comments do I get?
Yeah.
That's my gauge. And again, I have a unique slant on asking people for surveys and feedback. I think sometimes they don't really know how to answer it, so they don't,
Yeah.
or what they tell you is what they think you wanna hear,
Yeah.
or, like, the way we ask the questions kinda sets them up. I used to have a friend that was, like, a specialist in asking different kinds of questions on surveys to get better feedback, especially, like,
Mhm.
for big businesses.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I that's my gauge, if you will, is I'm really just looking at, like, what is the behavior?
Yeah.
Behavior tells us what we need to hear. Now, the secret is, how do you turn that behavior into clarity on what is the right lever to move next? And I think this is where, when we think about our topic, I teach something called the golden thread. It's like your topic, your talking points, and your invitation. And we're constantly moving people from, are they interested enough in this topic to actually listen?
Mhm.
And does the conversation hold them?
Yeah.
Does it inspire them? Does it create more intrigue and desire? And then do you have an invitation where they can kind of deepen that know, like, and trust factor with you and maybe go a little bit deeper into working with you or just maybe just staying connected on social media, right? And if we don't get the topic right, that's the first fail point.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we don't even get booked if the topic's not really aligned.
Do you do you have, like, where are people commenting on the episode specifically or on, like, the show notes, or are they just emailing you?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Okay.
No, Instagram, Facebook.
Mhm.
We, have a lot of people email me, they drop into my DMs.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
no one place where it emerges.
Are you prompting
Again,
them to leave feedback, like, in the show, or they're
they're
just doing it?
they're just like, "Oh my god, that was really good."
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
even had people, and this was really such a beautiful gift, and it moved me so deeply. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. There was a woman in Australia who was listening to my podcast as she went from Canada to Australia, and she created a video when she got off the plane and DM'd it to me how impactful what I don't even remember what the episode was now, that she listened to was. I was like, "Aw,
That's amazing.
wow, that really landed for her," and it was, and she became a client.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's
I think that's really the reason we have a podcast, right? Like, we're nurturing a relationship with people in a different format. I wanna talk about something if it fits for you, this research that's come out about, um, I think it's the 4-7-11 content model. Have you heard about this?
I
The research
haven't.
that Google did? Oh my god, it's fascinating. I actually did a whole episode on this,
Okay.
a
We'll
few
link it in
weeks
the show
back.
notes.
Okay, I'll send it to you. Um, it was fascinating. So I was coaching a client who was really, like, she was going for, like, $100,000 a month.
Mhm.
And, um she was talking about, like, this concept of how content is being experienced differently and then I was like, "Oh my god, I've been seeing this myself," and then I heard someone else talking about it, all of a sudden I'm like, "Okay, I gotta learn what this Google,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What
research
is it
is."
about?
And what it was is that the way people build trust with us now is not just in one platform. It's not just reading our emails. It's not just watching our Reels video. It's, I sparked you on that one platform.
Mhm.
Now I'm going to go, like, see you on YouTube. Oh, now I see you on this person's podcast. Oh,
Yep.
you've got a podcast? Now I'm deep diving and binging your podcast. Oh, I want to get your gift. Now I'm hearing about you through the email. And you're either developing deep trust and a knowing of how you can help them solve the problem, or they're going, yeah, not for me. And they're self selecting out. And that's why we can't just count on one stream to do all the heavy lifting anymore. And I was like, wow, this explains so much about how
Mhm.
people would hear me on a podcast, then go, oh, she has a podcast. They would binge my podcast, then go get my gifts, and then end up booking a consult
Yeah.
because they were having that trust built through these different touch points.
It's also what makes my lead source tracking a lot more difficult these days because I'm like, okay, you came from Threads, but you got to Threads because you listened to a podcast, but you got that podcast because of something else.
Yep.
So it's just really funny. But I 100% agree, and I've seen it. I was on a sales call right before this interview that converted, by the way. And it was so funny because we hop on. I'd never heard her name before. She had booked through I have a it's called Video Ask. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's through
Yeah,
Typeform.
I know Video Ask.
I love Video Ask. It's embedded on my sales page and it's, my face in a little video. So there's already a vibe check, which I'm a big fan of. And so this person had selected they wanted to do a one-on-one call with me. So they scheduled that. We had the call today. So I already know which offer she's interested in and that she would landed on that page and took the action. Great. So we're digging in and she goes, I said, what prompted you to reach out today? And what's going on over there? And she goes, well, what's so funny is I've been on your email list for a while. I saw one of your YouTube videos last year, which was not a YouTube video. It's technically on YouTube, but it was a podcast because all of that gets pushed to YouTube. Saw one of your YouTube videos last year. It came through in an email. So I snoozed the email for a year because I wasn't ready and I knew my business wasn't ready to work with you. But it popped up this week and I booked a call and now she's at a right fit. Her business is at the right fit. We're going to work together. It's going to be incredible. And it was just one of those like prospect journeys that I find so intentional on her part. And I'm so proud of myself for obviously having all of those touch points for her to continue from the last 12 months of getting to listen to the show and be a part of my email list and just knowing when she was ready, she was ready. And that's how this is supposed to work for me. And I
Yeah.
love when I get to see that.
So extraordinary about that example you just gave is I grew up in this industry at a time when you put an email out and you had 20 sales. And we call it the internet heyday, right? Like the internet was just starting to be active. I mean, I'm making my sound like a dinosaur, but literally I started my business in 2000 and we were just starting to learn, and we didn't have social media. We didn't have so much of the technology we had today. We didn't have Zoom, any of it. And when you sent an email out, people paid attention. And it was, an interesting evolution that we went through right around, like, between 2008 and 2010, where buying behavior really changed and people became a lot more discerning. And, the funding source, what we discovered, I don't know if you know this either, is like for a lot of people, they were refinancing their homes on these very low
Yep.
interest rates to finance coaching packages and big consulting and transformation. And all of that changed around 2009, 2010 as we entered into this financial, we'll call it transformation,
Mhm.
year. And I think it's altered a lot of people's buying behavior, and we're seeing it again, right? We're seeing another surgence of how people make buying decisions. And so if you understand your buyer's journey and what they need to hear, what they need to know, what they need to believe in order to say yes, and how you touch them in your way you nurture clients, that helps you develop the right content. It
Yep.
kind of inspires you to stay consistent, because a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
people, they start and stop their shows, or I'll send an email and then I don't send another one for 6 months, right? And it might feel like I'm supporting myself in, like, what I need to do, but really what you're doing is you're being inconsistent in
Yes.
how you build a relationship with somebody you don't even know is watching you to decide if they're gonna work with you. So, this is not about, like, you gotta, like, do the things you hate to do, but really just like, "Hey, are you creating the right environment to build up that awareness that you are there and you're not going anywhere.
Yep. And that is the warm, fuzzy feeling that I got from that conversation with her because, I've been in this space for 15 years. I'm celebrating my 15th year this year, which is very exciting. This is the third iteration of a business that I've ran, right? I was a solo when I first started. Then I was in an agency model for about 8.5 years, and now I'm solo again. And have kept the same thread, a very similar thread of who has been in my community and audience and whatever, but in 2023, starting from zero again, right? No list, no audience, no show, no listeners, like nothing. And it's really cool to see someone come in a year ago and I'm still here. I'm still talking about the same thing I've been talking about. And here's the container that you were interested in a year ago, and it's still here. And here's how it's even better today, but it's still here. I think being consistent, not just with content, but with our offers and how we help people and the message around that. That's my like kind of hill that I have with service providers of like, but you are an expert in this. Why are we creating something new? Like, just double down on this and show up as the authority in this space. And obviously there are a variety of ways you can do that. And you're an expert in many of them. And for my listeners who are thinking about creating a new offer or pivoting, there is a power in holding your feet firmly on the ground in what you know to be really effective already.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion that people experience around the creative forces that are surging through our brains all the
Yep.
times, right? The more I think maybe from a neurodiversity place or from a uber creative space, we also have
Mhm.
certain personality types that tend to be more creative, and there's this just surge of stuff that wants to come through them all the time. One of my clients, he's been in business for like 15 years and maybe a little bit longer actually, but he's uber creative and he gets these downloads all the time. And he's like, I got to move that out in the world. I go, do you?
Do you?
Do you really? Right. And
Mhm.
so, one of the things I think is a really great self reflection. And if you're working with a coach, hopefully this is how the coach holds the decision container for you
Yeah.
is, um, are you pivoting? Because the energy of holding this offer is so heavy and misaligned that you energetically can't move it forward, or are you impatient and you have not done the work to optimize it and know if it has the expansion capability it needs? Most people give up because they're impatient and they're not seeing the results, and they're not willing to test, refine, optimize it, but it is the right thing versus it's not who you are anymore, right? And so those are very legitimate things, but I think it's worth exploring which one is the right one before you throw everything away. Because I don't know if you've seen this, Emily, but creating is the most expensive part
Yep.
of business you will ever have.
Ever. It's can be the funnest for us personality types that jive with that, and it is absolutely the most expensive. And I think that I probably would have found every way to argue with that on that point even 3 years ago, because I love creating and creating has served me well. Creating is what built my seven-figure agency. Like that is what I did. But I left it because I was burnt out from creating and there was no solid foundation. It was constantly reiteration and putting on new clothes and putting on new clothes and putting on new clothes, and none of it like sticking around long term, right? None of it having legs. And when I went solo again, my husband challenged me lovingly, and he was like, you can create all of the things, you can help people do all of the things, and like, what if you committed to this thing for a year? Like, what if you just did that? And so last March is when I committed to like, okay, one core thing for one whole year. And because of the success I had of that thing in less than a year, because it's February 3rd at the time that we're recording this, so it hasn't even been a full 12 months. Because of already the success of that, I'm now committing to that one core container for 3 more years. That is my challenge before any new anything. And to me, I'm an art school kid. I have an art degree, right? So I'm a creative person. putting yourself in structure is the biggest challenge, and it's the biggest learning opportunity, I feel like, that we can have, and it's produced, up until this point, some really incredible results.
Love that. Yeah.
Oh,
And I think it's just recognizing. So for me, I don't know if you know human design at all, but I'm a manifester in human
I have
design.
human design. Mhm.
Yeah. And I also, I mean, not to deep dive on that because that's a whole nother conversation. But
Yeah.
what I had to discover about myself is that I'm juiced at the spark.
Mm. Mhm.
And I don't, my brain does not think in terms of what it's going to take to move that out in the world. So my creative urges oftentimes get confusing because I'm like, "Oh, wait, this isn't like this is taking way too long to get out there," right?
Right.
And so I've had to learn how to really, like, channel my manifestor energy in a
Yeah.
way that actually serves my business and serves the people in my community rather than derails what I built. And
Yes.
I think each of the 5 human design types have different ways that they relate to things and their creativity sparks, right? So anyway, and there's a whole conversation to be had around messaging and
Yeah.
brand positioning and all that with human design, but that's another
Well,
conversation.
I'm a projector, 2-4 projector, love
Yes.
human design, and a very similar where I love starting. I start, and it's that follow through that is the muscle that I have to flex, right? And so putting myself in situations to kind of be reminded and forced to flex that muscle, it does get stronger, guys. Like when you actually take that muscle to the gym, it does get stronger, which is wild. But what's really interesting is in starting so one of the things that I love being able to support my brain having brilliant ideas, right? Because we never know what the thing's going to be. But I gave it structure, and it happened, I think in December of last year, maybe November. I got an idea because some chatter was being had within my client base and my audience about something in a topic that's very adjacent to my message and my positioning and what I do, but not a part of the core anything. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe this could turn into a free challenge, or maybe it's a summit, maybe it's maybe it's something, maybe there's something here, right? Because I have a lot to say about this topic, right? And I could help so many people. And so I sat with it, and I, instead of creating it, decided to, okay, I'm going to make a form, just an interest form. And I'm going to drop the link a little bit on the podcast and a little bit on emails. And if you guys are interested, you can head to whatever link to just let me know where you're at when it comes to this topic. So I had people start filling it out, and I'm looking at their responses. And so far at this point, no one that has responded is an ideal fit for my core container. Like not a single person. And so, because I didn't design the challenge and I didn't pick the dates and I didn't do anything, there's no lost time. I spent maybe 10 minutes creating the form, and I've mentioned it a little bit. But instead, what it gave me, because I waited, was the clarity to say, oh, if I want to help my ideal client with this thing, how about I just make this a free asset inside the container they're already paying for? They're already inside. I love a surprise and delight. I love a sprint of some sort and like community traction on something. And so if it comes to fruition, because it's still not locked in, it's going to be inside of my community that I already have. They're already my clients. And so waiting can sometimes connect the dots on how you can take that creative endeavor and make it applicable to your person that you want to impact. Just a thought.
Yeah. I mean, this is where doing some market research can actually save you so much
Yes.
time and energy, and I definitely have seen, that's valuable. I was, invited to speak at an event that I was a little on the fence about, and it was actually a paid gig, and it wasn't enough payment that it would really justify my time and energy right out of the gate, so it was I'm
Mhm.
always looking at, like, well, what could emerge from it? And so we did a survey, and I looked at the survey results, and I was like,
Mm.
man, my little creative manifestor brain is like, "Yes," but my logic and my practical is like, "Yeah, it's not really" the
Mhm.
people that would be really aligned to work with beyond that first step weren't there, and so I declined it. And I was like, I felt really clean about declining it. Like I didn't have the FOMO because I was like, yes, I would get a little bit of revenue in the door, but when I invest time, money, and energy in building something, I don't just want that an initial thing. I want to know it's going to pay off over and over.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay. You mentioned earlier in the episode about a resource, and I would love for you to share the link now and to give us a little bit more sneak peek into that resource and who it's perfect for.
Well, I was actually going to share something different, but this just kind
Do
of
it. Okay,
naturally
fine. Yeah,
evolved.
give us both.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I'm going to share this one, the 17 mistakes
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
and here's why: is like I feel like no matter how you share your message, these mistakes that are commonly made by creatives and experts fall into place. And so it's called the 17 massive mistakes that can cost you guest experts make that cost you the lead and the client. And if you go to melaniebenson.com forward slash SDS podcast, see what I did there? Yeah.
Hey.
Sell damn service.
Hey, it's
So
me, guys.
SDS podcast. You can download it. It's my gift. And what you'll find is that I cover 17 of the places where, without realizing it, we get so passionate about what we're bringing to the world, we don't realize that we're not being as intentional as we could be, and we're creating a disconnect between your content, your brilliance, your magic, and the audience. And when you take the little scorecard and you review your pieces, you can quickly go, "Oh, yeah. Now I know why I'm delivering my heart and soul in a webinar, in a interview, on a stage, and I'm not seeing the results come through. I'm not
Mhm.
seeing the leads come in, the clients knocking on my door. I'm not seeing more collaboration opportunities emerging for me."
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely gonna go grab that too, because what's funny is that, the this show in particular, I can track uh, lead sources that have come through podcasting. You know, my because I'm one-on-one, I chat with every single person before they work with me, and aside from just filling out a form, I can ask them, like, "What content have you, taken in? Have you listened to the show? Have you done this?" And I get a little bit more holistic view, and a lot of people have come through my own, free offer and the podcast. And it's really, really interesting to see when you do look at the ROI of what you've built and what you're putting your time and attention into, it definitely gives you a little bit more fire under your booty when you have to go record an episode and when you need to think about thoughtfully what content you're pushing out there. And then if you can work to improve that even more, then that's when you've got a really solid content stream where, everyone's always talking about like, just I never know what to say or I don't have the time to publish, not even just podcasting, but like anywhere. And I don't want to do that. And I think a lot of that disconnect, at least in my opinion, and let me know what you've seen, but a lot of that disconnect comes from you truly don't know the impact that it's having on your business unless you track it and you look at it and then you make some intentional decisions to refine it so that you can see, okay, wow, me recording a 20-minute rant has an impact on landing a $2,500 client or more. And I think that that's literally business. Like you deciding to put your time in on something and then getting a return from it.
Absolutely. And again, like if you can't improve what you don't measure and
Yep.
track.
Yep.
I am not a geek when it comes to like, that's not the way my brain works, but I learned, that if I wanna improve what I'm doing, I gotta improve the right thing. And if
Yes.
I don't know what's not working, I'm gonna solve the wrong problem, and then guess what? I'm just perpetuating the problem. So,
Yes.
I
Yes.
love that this is where we're kinda closing out our conversation today is, I can show you how to be an amazing guest expert and that's going to command attention, that's unignorable in your industry, that's moving people into action. But if we don't know what pieces need to get improved, we don't know if it's working.
Yep.
So
Yep.
let's, make sure you're tracking. I always tell all my clients, track, figure out how to know what's coming through your podcast interviews, your different channels,
Yes.
so we know what's working, what's not.
Well, and podcasting is kind of notoriously the difficult one to track
Yeah.
because unless they're giving an email, like, how are we actually going to track that? And so I'm sure
I have
there's,
ways.
I was like, I'm sure there are techniques that you have that are behind the scenes. Definitely interested in figuring out more of what that looks like. Melanie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was fabulous. I loved getting to pick your brain and talk about I feel like also just like the ethical valueness of guesting and where we're spending our time pushing out content and making sure we're not adding to the digital noise that is so prevalent and being really intentional about that. And I love that you're helping other people learn how to be intentional about that too. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on today. This was a blast.
Thank you. And thanks for being such a fantastic host. And friends,
Yeah.
make sure you share this episode. Give Emily some
Please.
love. Go rate her show and give
Yes.
her some massive love, because us podcast hosts really
We need
appreciate
it.
that.
And please let people know what the name of your show is and where they
Yeah.
can go listen and hang out with you.
Yeah. Amplify Your Success Podcast. We're on Spotify. You'll find it on my website, Apple Podcast, whichever platform you like, it's there.
Perfect. Melanie, thank you so much. Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Sell the Damn Service. I'm really honored that you spent however many minutes you just did with me. Now, if you could go do me a very quick favor and be sure to like, subscribe, leave a rating and a review for this podcast over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or, pick your favorite platform. I'm not going to be that choosy. It truly means the world to me. It's how little tiny shows that are like mine, that are self-funded and, being edited in between dinner time and school pickup, it helps us get seen. It's free for you to do and takes just a couple of minutes. And I would love you forever. If I could send you an edible arrangement as a big thank you, I would. So instead, consider this giant thank you directed just at you for going to do that. And share this episode or this podcast with a friend who needs to hear it. I love ranting and raving about service-based business strategies. And, I think more people should listen to this show, honestly. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I really, really, really am grateful that you're here, and we will chat very soon.